Okay, hello and welcome to the Show Up Dad podcast. Today, my special guest, he doesn't need really a big introduction. He's a great dude. He's a journeyman lineman. He's been on here before. His name's Eugene Gloudeman from Line 11 Clothing. And it's just a pleasure to have you on here, Gene. Once again, bro, to dissect this podcast that we had earlier in the week. And just to go over this. Now, the podcast we're going to be talking about today is Steve Poulter's father factor. And Steve Poulter is a licensed clinical therapist, okay? To better understand that, since we're breaking this down in this podcast, it's an in-depth study of problems related to mental health. And that's it. So he deals in the realm of mental health and illnesses. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive into this podcast, this tailboard, as we call it. We're going to start breaking it down in layman terms. That way we can kind of take all the good out of it and glean it and help put it to use for fathers out there. Gene, what's up, my big man? How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm so flattered to get a second invitation, a second opportunity to have a conversation with you. That last time was a blast. I was, a bit nervous. Like we said, we are recording this and we know that people are going to listen, and all those different fears of judgment and criticism that are out there on the internet with these thunder thumb brave soldiers. But nonetheless, we're talking to our community, brother. And
Absolutely.
We're talking line hands across this country, union, non-union, who gives a damn? If you're doing line work, we speak a similar language. We have something in common. And we know what it's like to build power lines, to work long hours, to provide for our families, and to do dangerous crap in the meantime. And listening to this gentleman, when people hear mental illness, they'll instantly, you go into a rejection mode and you deny yourself the fact that you might be screwed up a little bit. And for anybody to be of any age or to have spent a reasonable number of years on this earth, we're all a little screwed up. And we're all, when we really, really get to the root of each other, we're the same kind of crazy, and some of us require help. It's bottom line. There's lots of opportunity for help. There's help in friendship. There's help with gentlemen such as Steve. There can be help in medicine if used properly. And to deny ourselves the fact that our brains are twisted, and sometimes our reactions, our emotions, our conclusions that we build in our own brains are often a product of ourselves and not reality. But we have a tendency to just pull the curtain right at that word of mental illness. And although we're not completely, let's see, how do I excuse me, did some camping this week and my throat's a little bit groggy and dry. I'll get that cleaned up as we start talking. We need to kind of humble ourselves and realize that we're not alone. And that's where I'm going to go directly into what I think causes that. And it's something that exists in society right now, and it's in everybody's face every day for minutes or hours upon hours, and that's social media and comparison. And the problem with that is that we put on this public image because we're putting ourselves out there, and nobody's posting the bad times. Nobody's posting the struggle. Everybody's posting nothing but that vacation or that new possession, and when we look at that, comparison, right? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And somehow we find comfort in our digital comparisons with one another. Yet we're all silently struggling, right? And I think that's creating and closing avenues of communication and opportunities for therapy within each other, because let's say I see Dave constantly posting pictures of his mansion, not talking about real issues the way he does. And all he has is nothing but good times, never has any head noise. Man, that dude's got it together. Do you think I'm going to be real quick to call him up and say, hey, dude, I'm going through a rough spot and I need a friend who's going to understand? I'm going to think to myself, that dude ain't going to understand a damn thing I have to say. He's too busy living life up in that mansion with all that cool stuff he has, right?
Yep.
When in reality, I guarantee you could relate, but I'm subconsciously eliminating you from being a potential help to my circumstances because I'm looking at all the good times you're having, and I either don't want to bring you down or I don't think you're going to understand.
Yeah, there's no relatability there and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take it even a step further, Gene.
Do it. Do it.
With that being said, do you think it's pride for us not wanting to ask for help? Because I know for me, a lot of times I didn't want to go to see a therapist at all. I didn't want to do any of those things. I mean, they made us go when I was in the military and stuff like that, or when I got out and I went to the VA. But I was like, nah, I'm okay. I don't have a problem. I can deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pride, I think,
Well, I'll go ahead and open the can of worms right now. I get to witness over 500 apprentices, young men and a couple women, and their daily behaviors. And sometimes they share their struggles with me because there's things that I could do to maybe aid them a little bit. Recently, we lost a 32-year-old apprentice to suicide. He was a father of two, one 9 years old and a 7-year-old. He was going through some divorce struggles and some custody issues and, living in a brand new relationship. And he had some of those, like you said, they can't see the video here, but you gave yourself that nice little fist to the chest. You got this, keep plowing forward. You got this, you got this, you got this. Well, everybody has a breaking point, man. And here's what I got, I've psychoanalyzed suicide countless times, only because I've been in some pretty bad places myself. And I'm just thinking, what the hell had a hold of him? Because he had just taken his step test a few days prior. He turned hot and he's, excited about that. We got him through it. I connected him with another veteran in the program. And I'm telling myself, okay, maybe God will intersect here and these two will kind of open up. And then in hindsight, those would be the last two dudes that would just open up to each other, right? Because these guys have been in firefights overseas. You put them in the right suit and give them the right weaponry, and they're powerful human beings. They can engage like world-class GI Joes, right? But you bring them home and you put them in a family setting. You put him in a rough spot with the custody of his children. And now, is he powerful anymore? No. He's helpless, dude. He's helpless. So you got a man who's extremely powerful in uniform, extremely powerful with war caliber weaponry, right? He's military trained. He's part of the U.S. military. We're the global superpower. In that setting, is powerful. And then had his legs cut off, literally. His legs are just swept out from underneath him, and he no longer has power. He was taught to be fearless, and here he is dealing with the custody situation. And the dude opened up on Facebook, and he said some things, and he said, "This is where I'm at. This is who I'm gonna be. Love me or leave me." And I could see in some of the responses, on down the line, I'm like, okay, my man's going through it. Because I've been through a divorce and I've been without my kids. And I said, I know he's going through it. So I'd ask him, hey, what you got? Talk to me, man. I said, I've been there. And nobody thinks that somebody else is going to understand their situation.
No.
And the quickest way to shut somebody down is to shadow their situation with your situation. And I just simply said, I've been in some screwed up places. I've had some bad things done to me. Maybe we could talk, man. But do you think that young apprentice is going to open up in a classroom environment where people may or may not walk through, right? Interrupt the conversation? Just because a guy who can think about a wartime experience, his peripheral vision is processing every little variable,
Mm-hmm.
and it keeps throwing him off course, right?
Yeah.
So that one time that he may have been on the brink of opening up to somebody, maybe it was that little lick of pride, back to the started this story,
Mm-hmm.
that got in the way. Who knows? We'll never know.
Yeah.
Life ended early, but I agree with you wholeheartedly, Dave, that pride,
Mm-hmm.
pride is a beautiful thing in its proper context.
Yeah.
But man, it screws up a lot of things. I mean, how many uh, arguments within a marriage
Mm.
go so much further than they have to on account of pride
Yeah.
in
Because
both directions?
someone doesn't want to lay down.
If someone's got to lay down, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're fighting to win, that means my adversary has to lose, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
But we need to detach from that, and we need to argue for what is right. And it takes two special people to step outside that circumstance
Mm-hmm.
and let go of their pride and really look at it in an unbiased way and say, what is right?
Mm-hmm.
Not who is right, but what is right. And that is a unique place to be and
Mm-hmm.
almost impossible to find.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. And you know, who talks a lot about that is Jocko Willink. And
Mm,
he talks about ego, that
ego.
ego is a killer.
It is. It
And
is.
when we allow that ego to take over, we're closing our whole world down. You know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
now we're not asking for the help that we need.
Yep.
Because why? Now I got this. I don't need the
Mm-hmm.
help.
Yep.
Really, what we're doing is we're shutting the doors to ourselves. We're closing ourselves off from all the lifelines that are out there. There's so many resources. It's like being in the trades. You know, let's say
Mm-hmm.
me, you are linemen, right?
Yep.
Why are you not going to utilize the tools that are given to you?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If there's a tool there, it's better than the tool you've had before. You know what? Let me try that bad boy out. Let me give it a whirl. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
the same thing with this. All this information that's out there, it's a tool. It's meant to be put into your bag to better yourself. Because
Mm-hmm.
everything is about growth. Because if you're not growing, you're rusting.
Yep.
And that's the truth. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
In everything, whether you're growing spiritually, physically, financially, whatever. You know what I mean? You got to be growing. If
Mm-hmm.
not, you're just rusting.
Yep. And I'll give you a nice little story. And life experience is a funny thing. And
Ah,
we're going to build on this because he was talking about exposure and exploration and
mhm.
other issues like that. And I heard uh, Pastor Bill Henderson in church when I was a kid. And I don't remember tons of stories as a kid because a lot of it was reading out of the Bible, right?
Mm,
And to follow a biblical story, I'm not a good listener like that. I can't really visualize that biblical context that well. I almost need like the dummy down child versions of the story.
mhm.
Give me the 10-year-old Daniel in the lion's den. And but what he said is that humans are like cars.
Mhm,
All right. Let's say we were born, both of us born in 1982. We're an amazing sports car, and we were sold off the lot for the exact same dollar amount. And we left and we took two totally different paths. You went your way, which was places you weren't supposed to go. You were rode hard and put away wet. You weren't maintained properly, but you got to see the entire freaking country. You went through countless sets of tires. Your interior shot to hell. Every single one of those bumps, bruises, and scars on that vehicle are a story for a human to tell, right?
Yeah.
But there I went. I was a Sunday driver, right? I was just a Sunday driver. I got put away. I was garage kept, and my owner washed me once a week. I don't have a lot of experience or time on the road. My body isn't damaged. I haven't seen too many experiences. I've only been taken around the block just to circulate some oil, right?
Mhm,
I haven't been exposed to the world, and I haven't seen what conflict in dangerous environment look like.
mhm,
And it's I really kind of took liking to that because at 38 years old, I'm number 14 of 15 kids. I was a parent at 17, and all the experiences that brought in, became a police officer at 21 years old, navigated that career, did extremely well, got into another career, and did a lot of living. I've dealt with my own little demons of addiction, sexual, alcoholism, you name it. I've had issues surrounding those things, and I'm not a perfect man by any stretch of the imagination. And I think at 30 years old, I've been that dude that's been rode hard and put away wet. But all those experiences, I got out of it with my head above water. And now it's time to pay that forward, because I don't think that everybody has to do that. There's no way to duplicate my life. And I guarantee there are others. I've listened to some of your guests. They've been through some stuff, dude.
Yeah.
And it takes listening to their stories to say, damn it, dude, you got out easy, brother.
Mm-hmm.
You think you had it tough, you got out with some cool stories, but you got out easy,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we need to find that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where comparison can be a valuable tool,
Mm-hmm.
not in the social media context, but just so that we have perspective in our comfortable little world where we think the slightest adversity is just crumbling.
I like that. Yeah.
Humans are
Yeah.
resilient. Humans are resilient, bro.
Hmm. Yeah. I really like that you touched on that, because you're absolutely true. I mean, what you said, because you start comparing, and you could do that negative and positive. And when you're comparing in that sense, it's a positive way to compare yourself, because it's actually operating from a state of thankfulness, because you're like, man, thank God I didn't go through that. You know what I mean? I was going down this way, but I see that the path I was on was leading to this. And man, I'm glad I heard this. One of the things my father always stressed on me is learn from other people's mistakes.
Oh, dude, you took the words right off the tip of my tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes it's threatening to share stories with your kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to gauge when they're ready to hear them. Because if you tell a 9-year-old who's not really deeply rooted, lacks foundation, and is coming up on her most impressionable years and most difficult years, she's going to go through puberty, hormones are going to shift, she's going to be in that cruel middle school. I mean, middle school's rough,
Dude, yeah.
Everybody's confused, and you share these dark stories with her. It's kind of scary, isn't it? Right? Is it the right time? Is she prepared for this? Is this just going to be an excuse for her to repeat my behavior? And she's going to turn the finger back at me and say, well, you did it, Dad, and you turned out fine. Right? But that's where, how do we impact their journey? Get them to learn from our mistakes, but not give them an excuse or a tool or something to use against us. And that is some dangerous timing right there, man.
And it's awesome that you touched on that, because when he was talking about that, this is one of the questions I asked him, and he talked about a daughter needs, she needs a where did he put it here? A daughter actually needs relationship. She needs that relationship with her father. And when a daughter has a father that's present, right, in her life, she's not looking for their dad in every man they date. And when he said that, it blew my mind, dude, because it's absolutely true. How many girls have you met, dated, whatever, me, myself, been out there or seen girls out there? They're always looking for something that they didn't get. And that comes from their father.
And they usually look for the opposite end of it. Right?
Yep.
And the opposite end of it is usually an extreme that you don't want to take part in. And I was listening to Matthew McConaughey's an intriguing fellow.
Dude, he's awesome. I like that guy.
He's got just and to hear how his story came about, it wasn't necessarily an underprivileged story. He just put himself through intentional challenges so that he can gain that perspective. But before he said that about the daughters thrive better with relationships from fathers, and how the sons need boundaries, right? And I heard Matthew McConaughey say something last night on a podcast when he was on Impact Theory. And it was a hell of a podcast, man. He has some crazy stories. And he said, I'd rather be a good man than a nice guy. And I was like, okay, got it. I like that. Right. So as a
Mm-hmm.
father, I'd rather be a good man than a nice guy because I'm going to be a much more effective parent. He wasn't talking about parenting. I
Mm-hmm.
just connected two dots. We're driving home from the desert last night. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, wow, I like that. I'd rather be a good man than a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, then he piggybacked on that, forgive my language, but I'd rather be an asshole than a dork. And I
Mm-hmm.
think our sons sometimes need the asshole because we
Yeah.
got to set the boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to set that. We got to draw the firm line in the sand. We got to say, hey, sucker, boundary first. And as long as you got stay in your lane,
Mm-hmm.
follow these rules, and we'll build our relationship over time.
Mm-hmm.
But while you're in this house, I'm the man. Follow the rule, and we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
But first and foremost, we need to set that boundary. So you had to be the asshole to the son in the early on, right? We're going to
Mm-hmm.
build on that. We're going to fix that later. You're not going to be a lifetime asshole. But the daughter probably likes the dork, right?
Mm-hmm.
She
Yeah.
likes
Yeah.
the guy that's going to sit there and ask her questions and how was your day and you
Let me do
know
your hair and all
let
that
me do your
stuff.
hair and so I was like, well, son of a gun, depends on the context, right? So you'd
Mm-hmm.
rather be an asshole than a dork. Well, it I could see both being
Both
useful
ways. Yeah.
if you use them in the proper environment and they
Mm.
have their own timing. And so I thought that was kind of cool how that jumped out at me. It was just ironic listening to that last night. So I
Mm.
was listening to that last night on the way home from our weekend trip. And then on my way into work this morning, I was listening to Steve, and just kind of connected the two dots. I'm like, I'm digging that, man. That's
Yeah.
works because they're gosh, man, they're hardwiring just as and it brought me back to a book that me and my wife read after we had gone through some marital adversities. And a friend of ours that had gone through some similar adversity said, hey, you need to read this book. And it was His Needs, Her Needs,
Mm.
Building the Affair Proof Marriage. And we laid in bed at night and we'd read chapters back and forth. And the author, right when you're sitting there thinking, like, yep, the son of gun's on my side here. See,
Yeah.
you're wrong. You better bite your tongue because the next chapter is coming after you, brother. And it was kind of funny to see it go back and forth and to write such a balanced story that basically said men or women are two different freaking human creatures that God created with intention that ultimately will balance this world, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and the dominance of one over the other. And I think that's where we're probably getting to a healthy point in society. I understand there's some extreme ends that are lashing out
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot, but if we could just realize that there's could be a natural balancing effect here, and to really I could ask you this, and I could ask anybody listening to us right now. If you got a good wife, or if you women have a good husband, would you be as good as you are today without that person challenging you
No.
with their own perspective? Would you, David?
No.
I not a chance in hell. I would be,
Nope. Not at
and
all.
I wouldn't take back any one of those fights, any one of those times where she said you're being an a or you're being a
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case was. Send it because I need something to neutralize me because if you leave me with me, my ego is going to magnify, it's going to grow, and something really bad will happen eventually. But I need that balancing effect,
Hmm.
right?
Uh-huh. And it's interesting that you said that because we marry our opposites.
Mhm.
We never marry the same because the way it was designed in marriage, and you're talking about how God designed it and stuff like that. It's like a gear, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And we're supposed to come together with our opposites, just like that, you know.
Hmm.
And we need to fill those voids because my wife is completely opposite from me. And health marries health. You're going to marry someone who's at the same health emotionally level as you are. And
Interesting.
when you bring that into marriage, you're bringing in baggage, she's bringing in baggage, right? It's up to each other to be able to help each other grow in those areas that we lack. It's like for me, I don't have empathy. So my wife helped me to become empathetic because that's something I lacked. Someone fell on the floor. I'm like, and? But that's just me.
Rub some
Someone
dirt on it.
rub some dirt on it. If it ain't sticking out of your skin like a Chinese spare rib and stabbing you in the eye, you're not bad. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I was. That's how I operated, even with my children, which is not a good way.
Yep.
But she helped fill that void that I had,
Mm-hmm.
and I helped her to be able to stand up for herself.
Right.
She was always
Mm-hmm.
just always yes, 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 and
Passive and getting
yeah,
kindness was
exactly.
weakness and got walked on.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And me, I'm completely opposite. So in a healthy relationship, which our kids are to tie this back to our kids, they're watching how you guys process life. We're being a
Mm-hmm.
role model for them. So when we
Yep.
can work through these issues as a happy, engaged couple, and I'm not saying we're always going to be happy, and it's not our job to create to make our spouse happy or even our children happy.
Gotcha.
One of the other podcasts, Nathan Padilla talked about that. He's like, it's not our job to make our children happy, but it is our job to create the environment which they can thrive in, to find happiness.
Okay, back to that Jordan Peterson
Mm-hmm.
line. Okay, the first role is comfort, right? They're in the most comfortable environment they've ever been in. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
they were created. Two people got together, did the thing, and it's comfortable. It matures quickly in the womb. Some are born premature, but ultimately it's supposed to be 40 weeks, I believe. And the next thing you know, it's removed from this comfortable environment where it has all the nutrition it needs. It's constantly warm. Everything's great, fine and dandy. And it comes out of the womb. And all of a sudden, it's got fingers pressing in places that are uncomfortable. It's cold. It's hot. It's hungry. It's got poop on its butt. And the first active role as a parent is comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Love it or leave it. You know, when you know that I've made this child comfortable, it's been fed, it's been soothed, it's had the right amount of exposure to this brand new environment and a gradual separation from that comfortable place that it came out of. And then you could start challenging it. And he says it's right around that 9 to 10 month mark where now we might start talking some self-soothing. Now we might be a little bit spoiled. But ultimately, then that leads into that encouragement. Right? Linemen are not encouraging creatures, are they?
No, no.
No. Were they heavily encouraged? All they remember is that time when they were 11 years old and their dad told them to suck it up and you're a big little P word and get your crap together. But going back to where that kid's 1 years old and it decides to take its first step. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody's going nuts, right? Everybody's giddy and they're clapping. Good job, good job. And in the back of your mind, like, I'm not raising a tough young man right now or a tough little girl with all this unnecessary praise. You walked, woohoo. Like,
Yeah.
isn't that what you're supposed to do? And there's little things in that tough guy, state of your mind. But back to your point, where you got to create a level of encouragement to allow for exploration so development can take place that ultimately will lead to a person who can function autonomously in the world.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, you talk about he went from point A to Z real quick there
Mm-hmm.
because when they're at point Z, they're going to be with you. I got
Mm-hmm.
my daughter on the phone right now, eavesdropping on our conversation as she's
Uh,
back home in El Paso. That
oh, right on.
she just came home on leave and she flew back and I texted her if she wanted to listen. So, I got her phoned in and, you know, seeing her develop where she's autonomous right now, you
Mm-hmm.
know, she's out there thriving. She's been in the military for a year and a half. And that's where I felt accomplished as a parent. And then I got her younger sister at basic training right now.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I'm at a point where like, well, son of a gun, Jordan, thanks for the affirmation that I did a halfway decent job, and their mom did a killer job, and their stepmom did a killer job, and their stepdad did a killer job, and every other person that played a role in their life,
Hmm.
and because mission accomplished. We comforted them, we praised them, we put them in positions to succeed. They grew at a realistic rate, and now they're functioning on their own.
Hmm. And it's awesome that you put all three of those things together. It ties back into love, acceptance, accepting who they are and what they chose to do, and then
Mm-hmm.
having understanding about it and
Mm-hmm.
why they're doing the things. And
Yep.
that's one of the things that Steve talked about is that love, acceptance, and understanding.
Yep.
One of the things I wanted to touch on that he said is it's never too late to get involved. He's like, if you're a deadbeat dad, Okay, own it. Take responsibility and get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Eh,
So on that point, understanding,
mhm,
and Steve had two different contexts that he used it in, because he talked about his career as a police officer, and I too was a police officer, and I grew up around a lot of gang members,
mhm.
and I think that's why I made a good cop, because it was, in my opinion, we always used to say, it takes one to catch one.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was like, I know how you function, I know how you operate, and that's why I was where you were and put you in handcuffs, right?
yeah.
Well, I would also see these young gang members over the course of 7 years where you can witness a 12-year-old boy, right,
Mhm,
whose father is in and out of prison and on and off parole, mostly in prison. And you can see him go from a 12-year-old boy. Yeah, he can't even, uh, son of a gun, all the things he cannot do at 12 years old.
mhm,
And he goes into a 19-year-old man. And I thought to myself, well, that's a great point, Steve, because now what if that young man had a healthy example, right?
mhm,
And he had a good, positive, masculine role model, because either way, he's got shoes to fill.
mhm, mhm.
Mm-hmm. He's got some shoes to fill. And he's not really good at doing those things that normal people in society know how to do, because no one's shown him how to do it. So that's a very unnatural environment, right?
Yep, yep.
So what other, where he's going to take the path of least resistance.
Mhm.
He knows how to be a damn good gangbanger. He's second generation.
Yep.
Okay. What if he could be a second generation lineman? Either way, he's got some shoes to fill.
Mhm.
And that other route over there where he doesn't quite fit in, he cusses too much, he's already got tattoos at 13 years old, and he's already been arrested a couple times, and he's a documented gang member. And do you think that kid stands a chance?
Mhm.
Honestly, I mean, he's going to get a late jump on things. And as
Mhm.
a cop, I seen his family, and I'll tell the story, but leave the names out, because
Yeah.
I'm very friendly with the guys now. I see them at the gym, and hell, I bumped into them at restaurants, and they've sent, they've picked up our tab, and
Yeah.
well, in this family, you had the oldest brother who had his little stretch as a gang member. There was no masculine father in the picture,
Uh-huh.
but somebody snagged him when he got out of a little stretch in prison. And somebody snagged him and said, "Hey, come here, jackass. Let's get this under control."
Mhm.
Started putting him on a construction site as a grunt. All right. He's seen something very natural in this guy.
Mhm.
And he, before you knew it, this dude's scoring these major custom homes. He's a full-blown carpenter, knows how to build these full-blown custom homes. He has an in with a local Indian tribe. So he's building these mansions. And the younger brother winds up getting caught in a gang conflict.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And it was a mutual gun battle. And the person on the other end ended up dying.
Oh, wow.
Brother had enough money, okay, to defend him. And this is where the judicial system could be kind of crappy, right?
Mhm.
But nonetheless, they called him the younger one, the $1 million baby, because
Mhm.
he was bailed out by a big brother who was doing very well. And ultimately, the younger brother was bailed out and got a 5-year stretch instead of life in prison.
Mm.
I see that dude today. He's one of the more interesting people I know, and I could have a conversation with him. And he's a journeyman iron worker. He, goes to LA, works every day, goes to the gym in his steel toe boots,
Mhm.
crusty and dirty as hell, shakes hands, coexist, because somebody decided to grab his older brother, say, nope, I don't like that route. I don't dig that route. You're going this way. Showed him a craft, right? Gave him some
Mhm.
better shoes to fill. If not, that cycle would have kept repeating itself,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So now you have two decent contributing members of society. You can't take back what they did,
Mhm.
right? But nonetheless, they're doing productive things, and they could be doing a whole lot worse,
Hmm.
right? So either way, they're going to fill those shoes, and
Yeah.
they're going to, so give them good shoes to fill and
Hmm.
realistic shoes to fill. And that's where I
Yeah.
think, linemen screw that one up, if you ask me,
Hmm.
because the expectation's so high, and the onset of it can be very rapid. And I know that sounds like a lecture, but the reason why I say this is
Mhm.
because I see generational linemen in our trade.
Mhm.
Okay. And they do one of two things, Dave. either they are badass and they just get right through that program extremely well, or they suck. They don't seem to be anywhere in the middle. And so far, since I've been in there for 2 years, I've seen 4 second-generation linemen be dismissed from our program. And I can only imagine what that does to their fathers.
Oh yeah.
And 2 out of the 4, I knew their fathers, and I've worked with their fathers, and their fathers were top shelf, dude. I'm talking just high reputation, could go work anywhere, run any project, you name it. And unfortunately, I don't know what caused it. Maybe it was the absence of dad. Maybe dad was out building power lines and not being an effective parent, you know? And this isn't, I'm not sitting here casting stones at those fathers.
Yeah.
And the reason why I share this story is because maybe we could sit here and we could say, hey, maybe I'm that guy who's working too much and not being an effective parent. And somebody's going to be talking about my boy getting kicked out of the apprenticeship in 15 years. Right?
Yep.
Quite possible.
Oh, that's very possible. I've seen it myself with people. I don't want to say any names, but I've had actual other, friends of mine who tell me I don't want my kid in the trade because I know they can't handle this. And I'm like, really? You wouldn't want your kid? He's like, no. He's like, I know how my kid is. And it's like, okay, well, you know how your kid is, but you've been on the road for the last 10 years.
But then no, you know how your kid is, and then how about a little bit of take a look in that mirror? How did you
exactly? Yep, exactly. Take a little ownership. Exactly.
And the ownership is a difficult thing to. Man, that's it's rough. It's rough. It's rough. And maybe you said that we marry our opposites, right? And I noticed. I think we parent as opposites too. We weren't given enough love, so we give too much love. And both are unrealistic exposures to, too much love can be a bad thing, if it's not presented properly. And sometimes tough love is uncomfortable. And I grew up in a house where brothers were in and out of prison, on and off drugs, never had a bed, right? And this isn't no sob story, but I seen my dad finally say, enough's enough. We have a chance with these younger ones, and we're not going to let them see this crap be condoned in our house. And my dad would kick him out, literally physically fight him out of the front door. And it was, pretty crappy seeing grown men fight, two men that you love, and then your mom would try to slip in the middle and all the house would be screaming. And you're just a young boy. You can't do nothing about it. You're 7, 8 years old, and these are 6'3", 270-pound men. Can't do nothing about it. But dad would kick their asses out the front door. And literally come 2 a.m., I'm getting woken up and asked to get off the couch so my brother can get in the couch, and to see that vicious cycle it was rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And guess what those men are doing today? One's paralyzed, still living at home, never been a contributing member of the workforce, but he's my brother. I can't hit that. And the other one's been in and out of prison, done some heinous things. And those were the 2 that never, it was just a failure to thrive because it was too much love. And now I mentioned in the last podcast, my parents were products of, dad was a product of youth authority, bottom line, and mom was an orphan at 11. And so she wasn't given any love, right? So here she is trying to offer too much love because she knows what genuine discomfort looks like. And she just couldn't stand the thought of her child being out there on the street suffering and being at home afraid of what they may or may not do out there, or who might harm them or who they might harm. She just much rather take them in here and keep them there for all their lives. And my mom's 83 years old, arthritic driven, and she still has these grown men at the house. She will not, and they can't. We're too late in the game, brother. They'll never be functioning members of society. And that's where I think too much love can be a very, very unhealthy thing. And it's so difficult for moms to do, and for that mom and dad to take that united front and know when it's a good time to say, hey, foot's down,
And it's interesting that you said that. I had another guest on the podcast talk about how we couldn't give what we don't have, right? Now, with that being said, your mom didn't receive that love that you're talking about. So she had to overcompensate. She never received healthy love. So she
Mhm.
couldn't give healthy love. So there was no healthy balance to give to
Mhm.
your brother,
She didn't know how to present it. She did not
Exactly.
know how to present it. She was never shown a good example of it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it was just it just that's exactly what it was.
Hmm.
And 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 the outcome, my
Yeah.
brother's failure to thrive. There'll be lifelong, people that, and it's unfortunate because my mom, within those 15 kids, she's produced a lot of greatness.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Brothers are very successful people. Everybody works their asses off. We got great reputations as laborers, right? If you said every family has one, do the math.
Yeah.
My family's going to naturally have many more. So I
Yeah.
think her success rate is kind of relative to a lot of families. But there's a lot of greatness, but unfortunately, my mom can never witness or embrace or enjoy all that greatness because there's so much suffering around her
Mm.
that she's distracted by the suffering and she forgoes her own needs and can't embrace the successes of her children or her grandchildren the way that somebody otherwise would, you know.
That's interesting that you said that because I I've seen it before, in other families and everything where you're absolutely right. The mother cannot embrace or celebrate these little victories, celebrate that their children are doing good because they're so fixated on trying to fix the broken. And I
Mhm.
think and I think that's what people do. You know what I mean? How many times have you seen women get with these guys because they think they could change them, because they think they could fix something broken? And I've seen guys do it too with girls.
Yeah.
They wind up with these girls who, she's broken, we see something that's inside of it, and we want to try to fix them. It becomes like a project. And you start
Yeah.
foregoing your own needs, like you were talking about.
Hmm. Absolutely. And it turns into an unnatural distraction, well, an
Mhm.
unhealthy distraction, because so much energy is going into one kid. And let's say you're in a sibling environment.
Mhm.
What's that doing for the other one? That one's not getting a natural level of attention because there's so much distraction by this one who's
Mhm.
over here doing bad things. And then
Mhm.
that leads to ultimate resentment, right?
Yeah.
And obviously we're going to cater to it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease. But
Greece.
then when
Yeah.
you got the kid over here who's like, I'm doing everything right. Give me some grease, bud. You
Mhm.
know, you have
Mhm.
to make some noise because that's what Steve said too, is that they're going to get you involved.
Yeah, they
You
are.
know,
It,
they're
it,
going to get you involved. So
mhm.
if you're not there, it's my boys. It's going to sound cheesy, but have you been watching Cobra Kai?
Yeah, dude, I love that show. Johnny's
Bingo.
my homie, dude.
There you go.
He's
There you
better.
go. It sounds so goofy that Daniel Son and Johnny Lawrence are gonna somehow write a movie series that my 8-year-old boys couldn't wait to get home from the desert so they could watch season 3. But there's so many legitimate lessons in that damn show.
Yep.
And I think it'll help bridge the parental ignorance, right?
Hmm.
Because you see all the parental hiccups that they're going through.
Yeah.
My child would never do that. And Johnny's the absentee father, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he was the superstar athlete in high school. So they cover all these different perspectives and all these different perspective point of view. They're synonymous,
Uh-huh.
but they cover all those bases, And then you got Miguel, who's from the fatherless environment, can hardly throw a punch, and then somehow him and Johnny strike a. I mean, how like who the hell? This is good, healthy, wholesome TV.
It is.
This isn't no strange, weird stuff that's being hyperimposed on us. This is just damn good television that's relatable from parent to grandparent to child, you name it. And as corny as that sounds, I think it's super awesome.
It is, dude. I mean, my daughter, we took her to go visit my mom and dad, which live 4 hours away. They live in the mountains. And the first thing she said, Dad, did you watch Cobra Kai without me? And I'm like, I did, but I didn't binge. I didn't watch the whole season in one night. I watched
See,
three
that's where the point
episodes. And
the boys burn me. Get this, dude. For any of you dads out there who think, I'm not watching that goofy ass show. I went to work today.
uh,
My boys stayed at home, and when I got home, the first words out of their mouth were, "Dad, we watched the whole season. You can't watch it." And we promised mom we wouldn't say anything. So to get some quiet time in the house, I said, hey, I need you guys to be quiet so I can have this conversation with my friend Dave. And they're like, can we watch Cobra Kai second time? I was like, that was my leverage,
Dude,
to get some
yeah.
quiet time. And, everybody wins. They're watching a good show for the second go round. And, the house has been pretty quiet.
That's hilarious, dude. Um, one of the things that I really, really liked that Steve said when I asked him is fathers don't feel they are good enough. And that's what he sees. Okay. And we always seek for our father's approval. Okay. And he touched base on how boys need to have a sense of mastery. And that develops courage for them into the next life, right? Their next stage, the next season in their life. And when
Yeah.
you have that missing factor, that father factor, they never got it. So that's what happens. Going back to what you're talking about, the gangbangers, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fathers who didn't want to step up is because they're missing that courage. They never received that courage to step up and say, hey, I want to be a good dad.
Yeah. They were only good at being bad.
Exactly.
By the time their light bulb comes on, they've set such a negative example, and they had a lot of fun doing it. Don't you tell me that those guys don't have a lot of fun doing it before it gets so miserable that they say, okay, I got to turn away from this, and I think, linemen are addicted to the road. They're addicted to money. They're, alcohol, women, all that good stuff. And by the time they get fed up with it all, it might be too little too late, right?
Yeah.
You're going to tell me that you got to do all those fun things that looked appealing, whether it's a gangbanger. Oh, dude, look at all those tattoos you have, man. Look at all those crazy stories you got from prison. Look at all those women you've been with. Look at all the, that is some very glorifying stuff to a young man. He says, look at that respect. When you walk into a room, Dad, look at that respect that's commanded. He's mastered the art of being bad. And that kid's going to emulate that because that's his most natural path into mastery. And what I did with my girls, and me and their mom were both ex-jocks. We didn't come from healthy homes, so to speak. We had a lot of love in those homes, but one thing we were pretty good at sports. So the parents, at least, we got to play sports. And then when you play sports, guess what you have? You have a team. And if you're good at a sport, guess what? You have people that need you in order to win, because that's the objective of any game. So then you have people that find you to be important to them by virtue of a team. Okay. So these things, and that's the form of mastery. And so we said to them, look, girls, you can experiment with this sport, that sport. You could bounce around a little bit. But by the time you're about 10 or so, I want you to really sink your teeth into something so that we can acquire that mastery. And it's okay to flirt with the dynamics of other sports and to understand the rules of different games and to be distracted. But okay, you start a season, you finish a season, that sort of thing. And by the time, the girls ended up in high school, I would have never envisioned it. If their mom had it their way, they would have both played softball. Period.
Yeah.
If I have it my way with my sons, which they're not a chance in hell I'm going to get it, both of them would play football and wrestle. It's not going to happen though. I can assure you it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
By the time these girls hit high school, they were in a swimming pool, something we had never done.
Huh.
But the environment that the school environment created, they became competitive swimmers. They became water polo players. And the next thing you know, they're on the same team competing in a championship. We would have never pictured it that way, not in a million years. But the stroke of confidence that those environments gave them and feeling part of a team and understanding that you don't just walk into a game and win it. There's that mastery that takes place in practice. There's that compromise that takes place with your teammates. There's that advice that you have to acquire from your coach. There's that criticism that you have to receive from your coach, and then ultimately there's that mastery of that craft. And you can't snap a finger and create that. There's a process. And that's apprenticeship, right?
Yeah.
Apprenticeship is that process. And how many linemen, because when he said that, I thought to myself, how many linemen, when they get that journeyman ticket, that may or may not be the first thing in their life that they ever mastered. And that is their first sense of mastery, even as a grown man.
Yeah.
And I could see it in some of these guys. I could see it where there was some absence of masculinity, and they
Mm.
walk into our program 140 pounds soaking wet, and they leave our program 185 pounds solid brick, tattooed to sin with a beard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Right.
they were influenced by a culture, because they've seen masteries, they've seen examples of master behavior, and
Hmm.
they knew that looked like, and they emulated the culture
Hmm.
because they weren't very well rooted at a younger age. So they were
Hmm.
heavily influenced by the culture in the industry. And so I think it's mastery. If I was to ask you, what was your job in the military?
I was a combat swimmer.
If you ask anybody who's been a swimmer, they're going to tell you their job. Boom, right off the tip of their tongue. They can tell you all the intricacies. They can tell you crazy details. They've mastered that craft, and they'll
Hmm.
have that confidence in that mastery of that craft for the rest of their lives. And that's why I think, like, youth sports, you and I
Hmm.
both have an appreciation for Joe Rogan. And
Yeah.
he said that, he said, and I think he was on a podcast with Jocko, and he said, all the cool and interesting people I know had screwed up lives.
Hmm.
And he said, so how do I make my children interesting? Because they're not going to have a screwed up life, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
He's going to they're going to have all the comforts under the sun, and they're going to be popular because they're Joe Rogan's kids.
Yeah.
And how can I make them interesting? And his only solution was organized sports,
Hmm.
so they're in jiu-jitsu, and I thought to myself, think about all the adversities that you witnessed in that athletic environment. And it's true.
Yeah.
You're going to know success. You're going to know failure. You're going to know resiliency. There's a lot of cool lessons learned that come from organized sports.
Hmm.
And that mastery, kids love it, at a young age. Just this weekend, we go up on a Jeep trail. We're just doing our things, 20, 30-foot rocks all around us.
Uh-huh.
All of a sudden, these kids come walking around the corner. There are kids, and there's probably not 8 or 9 of them. And they come walking around a corner with this rusted out tractor hood. And we're like, where the hell did you guys get that? And they're like, it's part of our city. And we're like, what the heck you guys talking about? We
Yeah.
go down there, they already got a rock fire pit built. They got the firewood that they've collected TP'd up. They got sardine cans from probably a military ruck, because we were out 29 Palms.
Uh-huh.
They got sardine cans that they found. They have their own little autonomous city right there, dude. And they completely mastered it. And the next day, guess what? We had to go back to their city. We had to go back. There was no way every one of those kids would have went to poopy face if we didn't go back to their freaking city. And it was
Oh.
probably a 6 or 7 mile trail, to get to it. But the reward they got when they got back there, they just enhanced it, improved on it. And
Hmm.
somebody found a Sharpie and a piece of cardboard out of their Jeep so that they could, identify it as theirs.
Hmm.
And it's just, you wonder how far that goes.
Yeah.
How far does that go? I don't know. But I'm certain nothing bad will become of that behavior.
No, no, absolutely not. And I think that's awesome to see that, because in this day and age, we don't see that. We see
Replay.
technology.
Oh,
Yeah,
mhm.
we see kids doing this, you know what I mean,
Yes.
in front of the TV or on their
Mhm,
iPads or whatever. And when they get that
mhm.
chance to get out into the wilderness, to get away from devices and all these distractions, to actually utilize that mind of theirs. I mean, the mind is a powerful thing, and for them to be able to put it into perspective, to see a vision and build this sport and master it like you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ingenuity. That's amazing for them to see that, because you don't see that in kids anymore. But I guarantee you, if you take away the devices, you get them in isolation like that, right, where they're
Mhm.
not distracted, and they get to start utilizing that part of the brain, that creative part of the brain. They're going to start they're going to start putting that to use. You know what I mean?
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a lot of fear that accompanies that,
Hmm.
right? Because you've
Yeah.
given them some free range. They were climbing on 20-foot faces, dude. Literally. And I mean, the face of these rocks were every bit of 80 degrees with a
Wow.
little fault line in them that created a foot ledge,
Hmm.
and there was no rope, there was no helmets, and all of us parents were like, "What the f, man?
Oh
Do
yeah.
we do we or don't we pull them down?" You know.
Yeah.
Uh, but we let the ponies run.
Hmm.
We kind of just put it in the hands of God and say, damn it, man, I'm pretty sure you don't want to punish, any of them,
Yeah.
so let's get them through it. And, but it was fun to witness that kind of behavior. And I encourage it. Yeah.
Oh
Because
yeah.
think about all the different, they're understanding gravity and
Mhm.
friction and angles and what they can and can't accomplish. And, and they're computing risk, and there were some bumps and bruises and
Mhm.
different things. And so I'm kind of a free range parent,
Yeah.
and to the point where might get a little bit of criticism.
Mhm.
And in high school, my daughter's listening to this story and she'll get a rise out of it, but nonetheless, one debate that I always had with their stepmom and their mom was, it's much easier to revoke freedom than to never give it to begin with.
Mhm.
So why in the hell are you going to turn loose of two pretty blonde teenagers on a date with a boy? Because I'm going to set a boundary, and if
Mhm.
they don't meet it, then I get to revoke on
Yeah.
account of them breaching that boundary. Well, the goalpost is always moving there,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they have a tendency to move it, millimeters at a time without you realizing it.
Mhm.
And so there's been some goofy times where, thankfully, one of us was paying attention at the right time. And looking back on it, there's big parts of me where I didn't like it, where we had tracking devices on their vehicles and stuff. And I'm
Wow.
like, hey, either she's gonna, you know, because the positions that it would put me in as a father weren't good. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I get a call from mom and it says, "Where's Elia? She's over at so and so's house." No, she's not. She's up at Makeout Point. And I'm like, "Where's she at?" And she's up at this particular location. I happened to be visiting some friends down the road, and I said, "All right, got it. I'm responding." And I didn't want to. I didn't
Yeah.
want to go. Okay. And sometimes God gives us those opportunities to intervene
Yeah.
because we don't know where those nights are going to lead to. And you're going
Yeah.
to trip out on the story and end up, I know we're going over here, but you want to keep talking, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I go down there and I'm driving this windy road to get there. I got my twin sons asleep in the back of the SUV. I
Mhm.
got my wife sitting next to me, and we had just picked up a little CR50, a little dirt bike. And
Uh-huh.
I got that thing strapped down in the back of an SUV while I'm going to look for my daughter who's breaking curfew and up at Makeout Point.
Uh-huh.
I turn the corner onto the street, and there goes our car flying out of the street,
Oh.
literally like at 50 miles an hour on a
Mhm.
on a residential street. I'm like, that little brat seen me coming, and she thinks she's gonna take off. I go into pursuit mode. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
like, oh, you watch, I'm a better driver than you, jackass.
Mhm.
And I turn around, I catch the little Scion TC, and I throw on the high beams and hatchback, and I tell my wife, I said, she's not in that car, and that's not her driving. I said, are you sure that's your plate? She's like, that's our car. And
Oh.
got it. So we turn on this kind of desolate road, and I'm like, I'm halfway tempted to pit him,
Yeah, I was
but,
ready to pit.
but I pull up beside him, and now my wife's cussing at him. You little son of a bitch, that's my car. And I'm like, yeah, she's cussing. I get to hit this clown. So, so I kind of squeeze him off, and to where he can't get past us. He's just a teenage boy, dude. He don't know what the hell's going on. Who the
Yeah.
hell did I piss off? I knew I shouldn't have borrowed Lia's car. So
Freaking
I
out.
put the squeeze on him, and I jump out of the car, and the window's down and the dome lights are on. I reach in and I just grab him by his collar and I drag him through the window. Where the F's my daughter? She's drunk. She's drunk. She's with the guy up at the point. We're just trying to help. We're just trying to help. And I'm like, where the F is she? And then there's the girl whose house she's supposed to be staying at in the car. She's nowhere to be found.
Oh.
So now we got, I'm going to call the kid's parents, right?
Mhm.
The little punk kid takes off running through a field gagging because allegedly I choked him and all this. And
Yeah.
so it gets better. It gets better. So he's gagging through the field. I'm just trying to help. So somebody swings by and scoops the other kids up, and they jump kind of out of our fingers. So I said, screw it, let's go back up there and find her. I'm seeing red, man. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
just visualizing the most negative things a father can visualize at this point. She's drunk, she's up at the point. And what the hell's a dad to do, man? I go shaking down every freaking car up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought for sure I'd seen her in the back of this car. I'm stone cold sober, nothing. And I just start beating the hell out of this car, break the window, and I kick the fender. And I hear this gentle voice behind me says, "Sir, why are you doing that to my car?" The car was completely empty, dude.
Oh snap.
And I'm in just such a rage. I'm like, where's my daughter? I'm shaking down, you got kids up there getting high and doing goofy stuff. And this time I'm like, all right, we're clearing out. There's some raging lunatic here. And I'm tramping through these hills and I can't find her. I can't find her. That kid's following me. "Sir, I'm gonna need your phone number." I'm like, get away from me, kid.
Go sit down.
He just wants to fix his car, right?
Yeah.
He was just up there on a date or something. He was just lunatic beating the crap. And I gave him my phone number. I said, call me tomorrow. I'll take care of it. All right. And he says, no, I'm going to need more than that. I said, get the hell away from me. You got my phone number. That's all you're getting. I'm not a scumbag. I'll fix your car. So anyway, we end up finding her and bringing her home. But when you really kind of think about how far that night could have gone,
Yeah.
had it not been intervened with those kids taken off in our car, that could have been a story of a small town,
Oh yeah.
we got some crosses on the highway and goofy stuff like that. So it seemed like the timing when we did intervene in certain things, we probably derailed a bad situation.
And do you attribute that to some sort of something talking to you, letting you know, just like a
In that
notion?
case,
You know what I'm saying? Like
no, it was technology, but
technology.
that's where I said, she kept moving the goalpost and I kept allowing. But when the freedom was revoked, she had no rebuttal. She knew, okay, I screwed this up. I got some dues to pay to make this right. And one thing that I would always tell them is like, look, we're batting for the same team.
Yeah.
All right. But if you could just tell me what pitch is coming, I got a greater likelihood of hitting the ball.
Yeah.
And so understand that. And if you I'll give you some freedom, I'll give you some liberty to explore and be an adolescent kid and make bonehead moves. But I won't allow for what I just seen. And tell me as a parent will put you in the position to just simply say, I could do all of these things, allow these people to borrow my parents' car and, not think about the extent of all those consequences and where that can go. Right. So when that new boundary was set, we held the line, period. And that's how it was going to be.
That's interesting that you said that, the boundary, and how she started working together with you, and that she saw that the boundaries were set, right? Now, I contribute that to what Steve was talking about as you having a relationship with her. Because if you didn't have that solidified relationship with her and she didn't respect you, it could have went the other way. She could have I've seen it. I've seen it in other fathers out there, where their daughter completely goes off the reservation.
Sure.
I mean, the fathers have been so mindset on having this structure that they needed to conform in, that it completely drove them away from religion. It drove them away from their father. And it drove them away from their lives completely. And they went completely the opposite. And it was just because he didn't have that relationship before he started implementing structure. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And what we've seen, once that trust was established and her younger sister got to witness that in her she got to learn a lot of, she got a little bit more sneaky, right? Naturally, like, big sister's got some sloppy game.
I could do it better.
I'm going to tighten mine up so that I can get away with some things. But at the same time, I got to know when dad's on to stuff. And so she got to learn a lot of lessons from afar. She wasn't no saint by any stretch of the imagination, and I'll never be convinced that she was. She got away with some stuff, I'm sure. But it was the right amount of liberty that was given.
Mm-hmm.
But once the trust was established, these girls would make phone calls to us where, now I'm going to sound like a parent that condoned a lot of bad behavior, but if you're from a successful family, you're living on the south side of Redlands, and your kid got a hold of some laced acid and is now tripping and getting kicked out of the party and thrown out to the streets. And only God knows. I mean, he still has his keys, and this dude's tripping on acid. And my daughter's the only one that goes after him and acquires the keys and calls us and says, Dad, I need some help. I need some advice. I need to know what to do. I need, well, she didn't call me. I had to pretend I didn't know. She called my wife because my wife's a nurse and can identify the symptoms and whatnot. And I had to pretend not to know because she probably feared my reaction. But the fact that the trust was acquired, and I don't know how we got to that point, but she knew that the next day we weren't going to chastise her for it. We weren't going to condone the behavior. We weren't going to simply say, hey, next time get your acid for me. It wasn't going to be something silly like that, but it was something where, did we put her in a position to alter the course of something very, very tragic? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows what would have happened? It's impossible. But I'm pretty sure that the fact that she got a hold of the keys, or however she influenced the situation just slightly, so that we can bring this clown back inside, because we all know him, we all like him. And let's think about this for a second and possibly save a life. Who knows? Only God knows, man.
Yeah. But it's interesting to see, though, that, your daughters are both in the military now. That acquires courage, because now it's a change, right? People don't like change. And we could attribute that to you having that emotional support in their life, you being present, you having that emotional connection with them, to where they're going out into society and being contributing members to society versus takers. And I mean, that's a testament to you, my friend, you and your wife, and your
ex-wife and her husband. Like I said, they got 4 effective parents.
Exactly.
And then they, even the stepdad brought in a good grandparental role. Unfortunately, here's some trippy irony. Here is, one's home on leave, right? Back on the 23rd. One's home on leave. One leaves on the 29th for basic. Grandmother's in the hospital, dies of COVID.
Oof.
Yeah, one of their only active biological grandparent. Damn good grandmother. And my mother-in-law for 8 years. And the way the stars lined up to where, visiting or even witnessing or seeing before that plug is pulled, and with the COVID sensitivities and all that stuff like that, the timing at the hospital, just because of staffing and small worlds, they were able to make their way up there and at least say goodbye. And they were both brave enough to go do it. And they went in that damn Area 51 looking bubble and dressed up in those gowns and got a chance to, hold her hand while she's unconscious and sedated and everything, and say goodbye. But the timing of that, man, what are the odds where grandmother's passing away, you two are never home because you're always away, and you just so happen to be here to say goodbye?
Yeah, that was definitely a divine set right there, where they're able to do that. One of the things I really liked Steve say, and I attribute this to you, talked about Winston Churchill, and how Winston Churchill said, we won this war because a couple of leaders got together and took responsibility for it. And I mean, that's just attributing that to you and your the community that you have with your wife, your ex-wife, their father, their stepfather and stuff like that. You guys got together, you took responsibility for your children, and you won the war. I mean, they're successful. You know what I mean? They're going on to their next stage in their life, which is really awesome.
And something else on those lines is, it would be easy for me to sit here and say, yep, take full credit. That's because of stuff that I did. That's
Mhm.
the narcissistic nature of any of us, right?
Yeah.
But we all know that it takes a village to raise a
You
family.
raise a family.
And
Yep.
there's those little conversations that she's having with a slightly older cousin, or the lunch and shopping she went to go have with the aunt, or,
Mhm.
it's all those little moments and those little small influences
Mhm.
that impact them in such subtle ways, that totally complement the parents' efforts. And so, with that being said, careful with the company you choose, right?
Absolutely. Mhm.
Because that village is going to raise your family.
Mhm.
And if it's a toxic village, your kids are going to be influenced by that toxicity
Mhm.
and may emulate it in the way you would hope not someday.
Mhm.
And we've allowed that created a huge separation with me and my own family for a long time, because I'd tell my mom, sorry, mom, you're condoning behavior that I'm not going to allow my children to believe is acceptable. Drug use and addiction and in and out of prison and affiliation with street and motorcycle gangs and things like that, where I said, no, I can't have it. My kids are not going to be around it. If they're at the birthday party, I'm not.
Yeah.
And so I took a stance. I created this family, and now it's my responsibility. Its outcome is on me.
Yeah.
And if I allow for that influence in here, I might interrupt my own efforts, and I
Mhm.
can't have that. We're allowed to part with family when they're wrong. We
Yeah.
could see them through some rough times if, you know, sometimes people at the bottom don't want help up,
No.
right?
No.
They don't,
Yeah.
they're not even willing to throw up the hand, but you're sitting there
Mhm.
dragging them, trying to help them. And that's what I've seen out of a lot of relatives. And I just couldn't allow for them to see that,
Mhm.
because they knew, like, okay, there's some drama on dad's side of the family. And,
Mhm.
and there's a reason why certain people aren't allowed here and we don't go there. So I kind
Yeah.
of took a stance to help control the village that was
Mm.
raising my children.
Yeah, that's interesting that you were able to see that and have that awareness and stand up in your role to be that protector for them, because that's what you are. You're a protector. You saw that, you didn't want that for your family, so you stepped in that gap to provide that layer of protection to keep that influence out of your family.
Hmm.
Now, let's take that a step further. Let's go back to one of the guests that we had, Nathan Padilla. His catalyst was when he lost his father, right? That was his protector. That was the man he looked up to. That was the most influential man in his life.
Hmm.
Now, his father kept him away from his cousins, who were, lack of better words, bad influences, right? Now, when
Hmm.
his father was taken out of that picture at an early age because his father died of a heart attack, he saw them kids at the funeral. Now, that was the first time he ever smoked crack. And it was because he was in mourning.
Oh my.
His influential father, who kept him away from that bad element, was
Yeah.
gone. So now he's smoking crack. And the reason why I bring this up is because one of the things he said was so profound. He talks about how he smoked and he threw up right after he took a hit of crack, and he asked for another. And he said right at that moment, he knew he was addicted.
Okay.
And I'm tying this together because, like I said before, you kept your family as a father protector, right? You were the
Hmm.
covering there. You didn't want that in your family, so you stepped up in that gap to keep your daughter safe away from the
Yeah.
badness that was going on, right?
Hmm.
Same thing that was happening on the retrospect with Nathan. His dad kept him away from that family because they were not, people you wanted to be around. And then when he left, when he was taken out of that picture, the level of protection, that covering was gone. He was left susceptible to that type of behavior, which ultimately changed his life for like 20 years until he came full circle and became a father, homeless on the streets with a child that was 28 days old and a
So
crack pipe in the other hand. You know what I mean?
here, and I'll connect a quick dot there. In the podcast with
Mm-hmm.
Stephen, you had mentioned parents allowing their kids to drink, because
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have them here than not there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask you this: have you done something stupid while drunk?
Oh, dude, ridiculous. Yep.
Almost every dumb decision I've ever made is while I was intoxicated, right?
Mhm.
And when you did that, did you felt like you got sucker punched by the intoxication and you said, man, when the hell did I reach that point? Right?
Yeah.
So I know without a doubt, everybody has that first time experience where they underestimated alcohol, they consume too much too fast, and before you know it, they're doing something absolutely ridiculous that they're going to regret, that they'll never be able to live down, or they're sick on the toilet, or the combination of both, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I got to a point where it's like, okay, I got to have a little bit of exposure therapy in a way.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna have, oh, you think you could drink, huh, kid? And I'm not talking to a 13-year-old girl here. I'm talking to an adult woman,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. Like, oh, you think you can drink, huh? Let's see how this works out.
Hmm.
And before you know it, we're holding hair back at the toilet, and she knows, hopefully, look, I didn't like that feeling. It was too much. Did it shut her off from alcohol forever? No. She just got to a point where she says, moderation.
Mm.
And I need to know that I enjoyed that feeling for a while and I might go back to it.
Hmm.
But at what point do I balance the threat and
Hmm.
not let it go too far?
Hmm.
Now, I lived in a household where older brothers, like I said, they were in and out of the system,
Yeah.
affiliated with different gangs and whatnot. And the second the cases of beer, these grown, strong men with tattoos and smoking, they'd walk up with cases of beer, and I knew within 12 hours, if not sooner, there's going to be a brawl.
Hmm.
There's going to be a brawl. So the second I seen beer as a kid,
Hmm.
I knew that there was going to be conflict, there was going to be violence, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
But did that stop me as a teenager? No, I still did some of those things. But then as an adult, I got around some people like, wow, you can do this responsibly.
Hmm.
Wow, the night doesn't have to end in conflict. Wow, I don't have to feel like hell the next day. Wow, I can still be pleasant company and have a good conversation and use it as my brother Tim would always say it's a social lubricant,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
It never fails. You get around a group of people, everybody's a little bit uptight, a few beers in, everybody's chatting, we all know each other's life stories, and we just made best friends.
Yeah.
That's the ideal night with alcohol, right? That
Yeah.
is best case scenario. Nothing
Yeah.
but good memories. Everybody goes home safe. That's it. Take some time to get to that point, man.
Hmm.
Because I've done some dumb stuff. Most of my life's major regrets were because of alcohol and not using it in moderation.
Hmm.
Now, do I enjoy some beer on a Saturday?
Hmm.
Absolutely, dude.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I'll be the first one to crack one open with a guy. And so, did I condone it and just say, hey, bring all your friends over here and let's all get hammered? Because
Yeah.
I'd rather have you here than not there. No, that's absolutely condoning it and setting yourself up and them for disaster.
Yeah.
Probably not a good plan. If you're gonna host a graduation party or something along those lines, have a legitimate game plan. And if you got some company, invite their parents,
Yeah.
and then they can make that call. Don't do it for them because
Yeah.
that's not fair. So that's where I didn't have an outright disagreement with you saying not for me.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that anybody's right or wrong here because
Hmm.
everybody has their own angle on it, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, but you said you quit cold turkey,
Yeah.
because whatever it did to you created something in you or an example to your daughter that you said no go. I'm just not doing this. And the wife challenged you a little bit. She said, hey, it wasn't an ultimatum. She just simply said, view this through her lens,
Hmm.
then ask yourself that, make your own choice, man.
Exactly.
And you made your own choice. And it's awesome. It works for
Hmm.
you. It works for you.
Yeah.
And
And
that's where you got to be. You got to
it,
be at peace with you.
exactly. And that's the thing I always tell, because I've never had any issues. I haven't drunk, I haven't had any alcohol in probably 10, 12 years. I don't even know how
Oh,
long.
man.
It's been a long time.
Good for
But
you.
some of the things that like people would always tell me, you have linemen out there that'd be like, "Hey man, don't you drink?" And it's like, no, they're like, come on, man, you got to drink. You
Yeah.
got to drink. I'm like, dude,
Nope.
unless you want a black eye and me telling you how I really feel, I don't think you
Mhm.
want me to drink. You know what I mean? And
It's not good. I
yeah,
one of my brothers, Dave, I love him to death, man. We can if we drink 10 times, 7 out of the 10 nights are going to end bad. I mean, the three that ain't good, they're great nights. Don't get me wrong. And I always seek those nights with my brother. But there's some emotional baggage and there's some stuff and there's some topics that we just can't stay away from and childhood resentments and different things like that. And it just never goes well.
Nope.
You know? And so if he was to quit cold turkey and say, I'm never having a beer again, I'd never ever peer pressure him or offer him or encourage or tempt him. And anytime I see a lineman around, hey brother, you want a beer? No, good. I don't drink. And most of the time it's I don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
And if there isn't any more to it, there's a bad side of this guy that he had to lay to rest that we probably don't need to bring out. So don't tempt him.
Yep.
You know, we're much past the age of peer pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and we're more onto the stage of regret and trying to recover now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, don't tempt the guy and don't force that down his throat because you might open up a can of worms that can turn that dude's family inside out. And that's not good.
No, it isn't, because I mean, you're absolutely right. You don't know the baggage, the demons that person is dealing with. You know, I've heard it once called you're feeding a monster. An addiction is feeding a monster. You know,
certainly.
You choose your monster. You know what I mean? What you're going to feed, and you did, like for me, you know, like I said, I don't have any problem with anybody drinking. You choose to do that. You know, that's cool. That's on you. You know, but for me, it didn't work. You know, and it was one of those things where when I was in the military, I could handle it and I had a great time. When I left the military, I don't know what happened, dude. Honestly, I couldn't stop. It was almost like my addictive personality kicked in, and I started, like, I couldn't just finish one. You know what I mean?
Do you think you were in a bit of a decompression?
Yeah.
Decompression where that was the only thing that kind of numbed you and freed up your brain for, because that's what I tell my wife. She doesn't find me to be a fun drinker because I don't want to sit around playing fun, fantastic games. I want to throw on Cody Jinks, Whiskey Myers, and sit there and drink.
Yes.
And not freaking think and just reflect on some good lyrics with some good music and be around a campfire. That is me. And that's boring for some people, but that is what I need, you know? And that's my little decompression, right? So, you know, that's the only reason why I bring that up. Do you feel that in those moments you found yourself numb and that numb feeling felt good for you and your brain?
And for me, I attribute it to numbing. Like you said, it was numbing. It was a numbing agent, right? It's also a magnifier. Alcohol is a magnifier. So whatever's in you, it's going to magnify. So for me, whatever I was dealing with that I was trying to suppress, the anger, whatever, you know what I mean? Past mistakes, whatever, I was trying to suppress that, and it was being magnified. So it was coming out. So I was acting in an angry, volatile type of way. You know, one of the things that my wife told me, and, you know, it's kind of embarrassing to say though, is I passed out. She would have to come check on me because she said that I would stop breathing. I would drink so much. Okay. So
Gotcha.
she would come up, and one time she was holding my daughter. Okay. And my daughter was little. She was not even a year old. And she went to make sure that I was okay, because she said my eyes would roll in the back of my head and I would stop breathing, you know, when I drink heavily. So she went to go make sure I was okay. When she did that, I woke up swinging, dude, and sent her flying into a corner holding on to the baby. And I didn't even realize I had done that. You know,
wow.
and I would wake up like that. You know what I mean? And I went to the VA and stuff like that, and they said, you know, it's probably you're having adjustment disorder. You're trying to adjust to civilian lifestyle, is what they said. You know, and you're binge drinking. It's not that you're an alcoholic, but you're binge drinking on the weekends. You're trying to catch up for the week. That's what a binge drinker does. You know what I mean? So you're in one sitting, you're trying to kill it. You have a 30 pack there and it's gone. Well, guess what? I'm hauling ass again to get another 30 pack because I don't know how to quit.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? And that gets dangerous when you're traveling with a daughter that's in her high chair, and you think it's okay to go down the ditch hauling ass 80 miles an hour to go go to the nearest all subs to get another 30 pack or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Wow. And that everybody has their own tolerances, boundaries, limits.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't, and you see people, all these apprentices will fall out on account of DUIs. Okay. Even with the
Mm-hmm.
modern state with Lyft and Ubers and stuff, and they get judged so heavily. And I can relate, man. You get into that Iron Man feeling where I could drive this car right now. I'm
Mm-hmm.
fine, and it's just a mile back to the trailer park, right? So
I would start
that
driving with the pirate. I used to call it the pirate patch because I could see better going like that.
with
Dude,
one eye.
I actually had a patch I put over my eyes
Yeah.
so I could drive.
I'm seeing triple. We'll aim for the one in the middle. It's just like it's silly, prideful, back to pride and ego, huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll give you a fun story. So Dave, mentioned that he's got patience, or not Dave, but Stephen
Uh-huh.
mentioned that I got both your names written side by side on the same note here.
Uh,
He had mentioned about money, and
mm,
uh, and he's got patience across, such broad playing fields there, right? From millionaires down to people probably on government assistance. I imagine the
yeah.
people that he might, see. Who knows, right? I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how broad his client base is. But I give you an interesting story, and I'm going to leave names out of it, and because I love both of these men dearly, and they're both good friends of mine. One's a lineman, and one's not. But um, I met this particular lineman through the really good friend, right? The friend that was actually in my wedding.
Mm,
He says, "Oh, I think you guys would get along great. I think you guys get along great." Well, as they're getting to know each other as neighbors,
mm.
linemen do what linemen do, and they brag about money, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the lineman's showing off his paychecks. And this is a 100-hour week lineman. And he's a damn good hand, dude. And he just loves doing this. And well, my friend, his son is a stud baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
And as their conversations get deep, people start to expose themselves a little bit, right? And open
Mm-hmm.
up a little. And then, the one friend says, "Damn, man, I wish I made that much money." And the lineman says, "Damn, man, I wish my son threw a baseball like yours." Dude, powerful, isn't
It
it?
is. It is.
I mean, what a humble statement. And that they're both, matured into great fathers and effective fathers, and learn how to, keep work in moderation. But back to that money,
Yeah.
you look at your son throw a baseball, man. I'd pay for your son's arm.
Mm-hmm.
And what it took to get him to that point, how much attentive parenting that it takes, to produce a star athlete like that.
Mm-hmm.
And what a freaking cool story, and to no embarrassment of either of them. I'm not comparing them as dads. I'm just simply saying Lyman's boasting about money, but on his heart, what's weighing on his heart?
Yeah.
The comparison of his children
Mm-hmm.
to a like age boy,
Hmm.
and I thought, damn, that's pretty potent right there, because that comparison is a reflection of your performance as a parent.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think it's interesting that you said that because Steve talked about you can't buy emotional support. It's a commodity you cannot buy. So with that being said, you know what I mean? That father,
It's not for sale, dude.
it's not for sale. You know what I mean? So that was a good analogy
It
that
is.
you had there, you know?
It's not for sale, man. I'm telling you, money can't buy me love.
Hmm.
And you can't recreate memories. You can't. We were joking out there at the desert, and the kids are all jamming up the hill, and of course the women, right? What
Yeah.
do they want to do? Get some pictures for social media.
Oh,
And
yeah.
one of the old timers there, he's here, I got your picture right there, and he just shapes his hand right in front of his eyes. And he said, "Captured it in my brain." And that's us as parents, as kids, and that's how I feel. I said, don't interrupt this natural moment to assemble everybody. They're
Hmm.
doing just fine, but then sometimes my wife will get those moments, and I'll
Yeah.
appreciate it later, and I'll say, "Man, that was cool," you know, because
Oh,
not only do you get it in your brain, but you get to look back at it and reflect on it as a physical image.
oh, yeah. And it's so cool because with technology now, you can capture those little moments that are
They're
priceless.
on
Like,
demand.
and it's really cool because, like, my boy lost his first tooth the other day. And
Okay.
I mean, he was so excited and he was crying because he thought he was going to hurt when he lost it. And then he was excited and his enjoyment turned from, it did hurt. I lost my first tooth, and guess what? I'm getting money. He tells me I'm getting
Yeah.
paid, sucker. You know what I mean? And it was just a cool moment that I had missed with my other children being on the road, working to
Yeah.
provide for my family,
Big
to
time.
where
Big time.
I was able to capture it, and you know what I mean? And now I have it to where I won't forget that. You know what I mean? It's there. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's
Well,
forever captured.
I've seen some linemen get real creative, man. And
Oh yeah.
but it takes a special level of cooperation to pull it off. Where seen one lineman, he had a fifth wheel and his goal was to tramp in all 50 states. And his
Mm,
wife was just built for homeschooling, and they were so systematic, and they just had the system down, and it was going to be super um, good for them. And the
yeah.
wife was on board, and they just embraced the entire thing. And when dad would work, dad would work. When dad would be home, he'd be home. And so
Mm,
it was life on the road, but with the family.
yeah.
Seeing linemen settle for the job that they didn't care for,
Mm, yeah.
right? So maybe something on the service crew, or maybe they had to take a foreman spot for a company they hate, or different things just so they can make it work for the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen tons of marriages fall apart, and it would sucks for the lineman because I just got being a provider, jerk, like
Mm-hmm.
I was doing my job out here, working my butt off, going to war every day, and bringing food home and putting it on the table and buying you all that nice stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and you're complaining. Yeah, I'm complaining because there's a void, sir.
Mm, yep.
Yeah. So yeah, you know what I see, when I went through the apprenticeship,
Uh,
I was one of the only dads in my class, and I
uh,
remember being like the oddball. And so I was 20, 28, 29 years old going through. A lot of these guys were in the early 20s, and some of them were similar age. Not many of them had children,
yeah.
so it wasn't a lot of relatable. But I think words out on the stability that linemen can provide, because now
Mm-hmm.
every freaking one of these apprentices, damn near, has a baby mama, and not all the circumstances are good, dude.
Ooh.
And it's shame to see. And oftentimes I'm asked to help, right,
Mm-hmm.
with geography, so that an apprentice can uphold his custody obligations and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a tough cross for me to bear. And so I just encourage, if there's any young linemen listening, or young apprentices or young linemen out there, make sure that she's the right one. You
Mm,
got to validate that girl. Do your pole inspection before you drive away, and because you might be getting yourself on a wild ride that you may regret someday.
mm,
And it's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for her, and it's not going to be good for the child you might create together.
mm,
So take your time. Don't be in a rush to be a parent. But if it's right, it's right. You're going to live with your circumstances. Whatever you create, you bring to this earth. You're more than a paycheck, guys. So
mm-hmm.
be ready for that. And
And you're a father for life.
it ain't going anywhere. It
Yep.
ain't going anywhere. So yeah, one last thing, if you don't mind, I'll throw this out there.
Yeah.
And Stephen said, the day a son forgives his father is
Mm,
the day he enters adulthood.
mm-hmm.
Think about all of the like, first of all, where did he simply say, that SOB never did nothing good for me. He always did this. He always did that. He was there for everybody else. He was never there for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's in a state of arrested development, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
He's captured right there at that moment, and
Yep.
he's not advancing forward. And I've seen this um, throughout different people's lives,
Mm-hmm.
relative, where a significant emotional experience would occur, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
brought this up at Nick's funeral, and this is a significant emotional experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? And his mother was there, his dad. Small world. I happen to know the family through, the football community and different things growing up, law enforcement family. And I've seen families, and I've seen children, and I've seen parents get trapped right there.
Mm-hmm.
and not progress and not advance forward. And we have a damn good brother in our union, and he's kind of higher up at our union hall, and he lost a 19-year-old daughter, and he was trying to plow forward, and he's trying to still do his job and answer all his needy little bitchy lineman's needs, while he just recently laid to rest a 19-year-old daughter and is trying to manage his wife who's going through it right now,
Wow.
and if you think you got needs and you got things to complain about, put one of your children in the ground and tell me if you can gather up the wherewithal to push through that and push forward and get your family through that somehow, and not just trapped there. And that's where I think, yes, he was trapped in such a selfish state, of resentment towards his father, and even as a grown man, we could harbor all that and say, you did this to me, you did that to me, you beat my ass, you were an alcoholic, whatever example, you're always on the road, you put line work before family, whatever it is. You're a grown man now, my friends. I'm not telling you to just, there's no delete button on the brain, but seek out men like Steven, you know, who can get to the root of that problem, right? And then we can start chopping down that tree, because if we don't identify the root of that problem, we're never going to root that thing. We're just going to cut off a branch and it's going to grow right back. We're going to cut off another branch, and at that point, we're just maintaining something. You're just pruning the tree. You'll never get rid of it. So I don't discourage professional help. And it took me 36 years before I had my marriage in jeopardy. And it was an ultimatum at the time. And so I was kind of going involuntarily.
Yeah.
And it was one-on-ones. And then I didn't know if it was a strategy by this particular gentleman, but it seemed like I turned into the damn counselor, right? Where I'm counseling him. And I'm like, is he just trying to find common ground? I don't know the approach, right?
Yeah.
But as I continued past it and didn't overthink it and didn't get my defenses up, we made progress. And he was a genuine professional at work, because he did have to establish some common ground to get me vulnerable, to get me to open up, and to get me into those moments where you can actually get to the real truth. Because if you're just feeding him some soft shell crap, he's going to see right through it. He wants to get to the real problem, everybody. If you're just going through the motions for your wife, come back later. And so, and then me and her, she harbored some resentment for a couple of years and whatnot, and then we went together. And it got to the point where she's like, I think he's bored with us. And I said, because we're not bad off, babe. I said, we're in pretty damn good shape. You got to go cussing me a little bit, cry a little bit, get some things off your chest. And, he tells me, some advice, tells you some advice, and we get through it, right? Putting it in the hands of a third party where you're both voluntarily going there, or you're just going there as an individual, it makes a difference too.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're going to formulate your own conclusions. And I guarantee you're just telling yourself what you think you already know.
And it just gives you an opportunity to see a different perspective.
Big time. And a professional, uncontaminated perspective.
Yes,
because
exactly.
my big problem there was like, all right, this jackass young liberal privileged SOB who's never seen a hard day in his life, went to a 4-year university, and what's he going to tell me about me?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't taught about hard knocks. He was just taught about how to repair brain damage. That's all he was. He has an education in this. You have an education in life. Good for you, right? So everything you know about life, he knows about his subject matter. So give him the credit where credit is due. Right? Because if you want to take your credit, back to my car analogy, you want to take your credit for all those miles you got on you and all those stories and all those scars and bumps and bruises and different things that you have to tell. He has equal parts of that in his practice. So just as good as you are at life, he is within his own scope of medicine. So don't be too proud to visit with men or women like that, and find one that fits.
Yeah.
Because they're not all the same. There's some that are one trick pony and they're just entering the field, and there's some that are just seasoned veterans.
Mhm.
And find the guy that fits you, or find the gal that fits you, and keep going back. Don't let pride or ego get in the way of solving that problem, because it's not mental illness right now. But if it continues to masticize, it will eventually grow into that.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that you touched that you got to destroy the root from below to destroy the fruit that it produces.
Bingo.
And
Yep. You formatted that much better, sir. That was it. That was it, man. But like I said, if you're just hacking off branches,
you're
which
maintaining it.
those drunken nights for me, I'm just hacking off branches, where
Yeah.
those Saturday nights, I'm just maintaining it. That might be just enough release I need,
Yeah.
or decompression, or I encourage hobbies. I don't have many of them, but when I find one, man, does it distract me in such a good way. you know,
Yeah.
I'm, before it was like, okay, now I'm in an environment where people want to golf all the time. I'm like, do you want to go in the backyard and lift rusty weights?
Right. Right.
Because that's where I feel comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Exactly.
mean to tell me I got to go play this slow motion precision sport that I'm not very good at?
Yeah.
I'd rather seek comfort in an environment that I feel good in, right?
Yeah.
And
Let's go.
that's what human nature does.
Exactly.
Human nature
That's
does. It finds comfort.
awesome that you touched on that, dude. Because I know for me, anything I do, I start taking to the excess. So now that I'm aware of that now because I have
Yeah.
gone through counseling and stuff like that. I understand that I have an addictive personality. So just because I traded in drinking or tobacco use, you know what I mean? I started having other stuff that started becoming unhealthy, running 7 to 10 miles a day and going to all these different adventure races and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I started
Mm-hmm.
getting addicted again.
Yeah.
This time it was healthy, but still it started taking away. I call those energy leaks. It's kind of like having a transformer and you have
Yep.
too many servers off of it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And you have voltage drop, and it's kind of like that. You got all these energy leaks, and
Working too hard for too long.
exactly, dude. And
Bingo.
so I started seeing that, and I started
We're
making
not transformers, right? We can't just swap it out for a larger KVA.
yeah,
So.
yeah, exactly. We got to make those little adjustments, and I think the word they're
Yes.
using it now is shifting. Everybody's calling it a shift. You
Okay.
gotta shift nowadays, right? Make those little
Mm-hmm.
shifts, those little adjustments. And that's what I started doing. Now that I was aware of my addictive personality, I started making those little shifts, little adjustments to get rid of those things that rob me from the intentional, committed, responsible father that I wanted to be for my children, because
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
hobby started robbing my time from my kids
Yeah.
because now that
Bingo.
was my solace. That was me going, I'm going to
True.
go and
Yeah.
deal with this. You know what I mean? To get away
Yeah.
while my kids are like, Dad, you're home. And I'm like, no, I got to go do this, son. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so
Oh no, I feel guilty even about this conversation. I could be 4 episodes into Cobra Kai right now,
I know, dude.
dude.
Me too. Right on,
It's
brother.
the truth, man. It's the truth.
But,
Because
but
they couldn't wait to get
I know, man.
But on that point, one thing that we look forward to in my household, in that video by Jordan Peterson, I just punched in Jordan Peterson parenting, right?
Uh-huh.
Uh, he talks about bantering with your kids,
Hmm.
wrestling. It's almost like you're preparing them to dance.
Hmm.
And people get offended with him because he compares humans a lot to the animal kingdom.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't find any offense whatsoever in that. He says, you take a young puppy to the dog park, and then
Hmm.
it learns how to banter with other animals, and it learns how to interact, and it knows what a growling, aggressive dog looks like, and it knows what ones that want to have fun looks like,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
How are our kids any different? We're
Exactly.
teaching them how to dance. We're teaching them how to play and coexist and know what a threat looks like and know what somebody who's trying to be offensive looks like and know, so at my house, we have a couple things because a lot of my older brothers were good people, and
Yeah.
they were real good big brothers,
Yeah.
and we were always into WWF. And so we'd reenact it and everything. I think every young kid should reenact, some form of fictitious wrestling.
Yeah.
So we have Wednesday night wrestling, and then we have Thursday night throwdown. Well, they're 28-year-old boys, and they're on demand in my house. They could drop in front of me, do 30 push-ups, and I'll hand them $1. And I don't care if they sat there and did 5 sets of 30, they're getting $5.
Yeah.
As many push-ups as they want to do, they could have $1. So they're pretty physical, they're pretty strong. And we'll have these, I'm to a point where, hey fellas, as hard as you hit me, I'm gonna hit back. Because it
starts to hurt,
and they got to get a hold of their hands and feet, because they're going to find like age kids who say, hey, too rough, and they're not going to learn how to gauge the circumstance.
Yeah.
And that's where I need to get them back into jiu-jitsu and different physical environments. But with COVID, it's just been as many families are dealing with the absence of those resources right now. But teach kids how to dance. Put that little girl on your feet and move her around and all that good stuff. That's where the relationship starts. My kids, my daughters have our wedding songs picked out.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
They both said, hey, we're not getting away with just one. They have 2 each.
That's awesome.
And they're probably gonna dance with their stepdad as well. And that's awesome too. And that's back to that relationship. 4 parents for those kids. You talk about letting go of some pride and ego and not viewing it from just your lens. That teach them how to dance, fellas.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. That's awesome, dude. Well, Gene, it's been a great night, bro. I love having you on here, dude. And you brought some really good insight and truth. And I just love it, dude. I mean, everything you say is just something that we can use as linemen or even other tradesmen. They can take everything they want and just add it to their toolbox.
And I don't care what 2 belts wrapped around your waist, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Tradesmen are all the same.
Yep.
You put passion into your craft. You spend time away from your family so that you can provide. You hang out with your coworkers more than you see your own children. We all deal with struggles, guys. And although this is a lineman moderator and I'm a lineman guest, we all have buddies in every trade, and we know that that we all suffer and feel the same struggle. And
exactly.
Encourage guys to find environments and communities like this and spend time in them, because social media is a powerful tool.
Yeah.
And it could be used for evil, and it could be used for
good. Yeah.
And this is a damn good use, man. A damn good use. I can't say it enough. And it's trippy how we found each other.
Yeah, it is.
Just like, man, I like this guy's stuff. It's like you were like the Cody Jinks of Instagram. I was like, yeah, buddy, let's do it.
Yeah, that's awesome, bro.
He's speaking to my soul. Is that Fergie and Jesus?
That's awesome, bro. But yeah, dude, I thank you, bro. And like I said, I look forward to many more of these. I mean, it's such an inspiration to see like-minded guys get together and just, be able to dissect this and bring it to our audience in a way that's relatable to them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
From real guys, because that's what we are. We're real guys. We're like you said, we're tradesmen, we're linemen, but at the end of the day, we're fathers, fathers, and we're husbands. And that's a level playing field, like Steve said.
Yes.
And I want the best for your children, just like you want the best for my children.
Amen.
And for the guys who are listening on this podcast. So I thank you, bro. Good night, dude. I'll let you get to Cobra Kai because I'm going to go watch it myself. Yeah, I mean,
the suspense is killing me, dude.
I know, dude. Man, but thanks, Gene, and take care. And I'll talk to you soon, brother.
It's an absolute pleasure. Anytime.
All right. And Gene, just for them to just to throw it out there once again, it's going to be in the notes. To get a hold of you, Line11 on Instagram, and then your Facebook, Gene Gloudeman, correct?
Eugene Gloudeman, Eugene. Last name Gloudeman, Gloudeman. Common spelling, huh?
Yeah.
And then the Instagram's at Line11 Clothing. And we have a lot of fun there. We're just throwing out a patriotic, bold, wholesome, courage-built message. And that operation where we're restoring that brotherhood. And to some of you old timers out there, man, I'm hearing it from our youngsters that you guys are not too fond because your bitterness towards the brotherhood. Keep that shit out of our backyard, guys. We don't need your negativity. All right. Remember when you were fresh and impressionable, and don't impose your negative projection on our younger guys. Give them a fair shake at this thing. So at Line11 Clothing on Instagram and Eugene Gloudeman on Facebook.
Right on. Thank you, Gene. And once again, dude, I wear his stuff. It's amazing. The quality speaks for itself. You want to talk about craftsmanship? I mean, this is legit. His clothing is legit, Gene. So thank
Right
you,
on,
dude,
bro.
and keep it pouring out, bro. And we thank you for everything you do, dude. And you have a good night, okay, brother?
I'm gonna Cobra Kai.
Oh yeah, Cobra.